In the world of One Piece, intricately woven by Oda, nothing seems random. Every detail, no matter how simple it may appear, carries with it deep dimensions and a legacy passed down through generations. From this perspective, the idea that Gol D, Roger's father, was once a pirate and the one who gave Roger the straw hat, later passed to Shanks and then to Luffy, is not far-fetched. It could be a missing link that completes the legend's picture. The straw hat was not just a piece of headgear. It was a symbol that carried a dream and a legacy passed through generations. The legacy of Joy Boy, who sought to break the world's chains and reveal the truth. Perhaps Roger's father was one of the few pirates of his time who knew about Joy Boy's existence, either through the Poneglyphs or via an oral legacy passed down by those who devoted themselves to protecting the truth. It is also possible that he was one of those who tried to reach Raftel but failed, either due to the power of the world government at the time, or because the conditions to truly understand the message behind the Poneglyphs were not yet fulfilled, especially since understanding the ancient language was only available to a rare few. Therefore, this father may have believed that his son would be the one to complete the dream and become the person capable of hearing the voice of everything. And so, he entrusted him with the straw hat, not as a gift, but as a legacy, a symbolic passing of will. If we reflect on Oda's writing style, we notice that each major character in the story has followed in the footsteps of a previous mentor who influenced them and changed their path. Luffy followed in Shanks's footsteps, who, in turn, inherited Roger's will. Kobe strives to be like Garp. Ace found safety and fatherhood in Whitebeard. And even Kuma, whose belief in sun god Nika was instilled by his father, who believed in the return of the legendary savior, sun god Nika. So, how could Roger himself not have been guided by his father from childhood to embrace a dream greater than the treasures of the world? A dream that transcends personal glory and concerns itself with freeing humanity from oppression and revealing the mysteries of the Void Century, which the world government tried to erase by all means possible. Moreover, the similarity between what Kuma's father Clap did with his son and what Roger's father might have done with him makes this possibility even more logical within this world rich in inherited symbols. Perhaps the straw hat was originally inherited by Roger's father when he himself was a dreamer aspiring to travel the farthest seas. But over time, it became a symbol of a greater will, one that belongs to Joy Boy himself, passed from generation to generation, waiting for the one who has the strength, freedom, and passion to break the chains of injustice and build a new era. From this standpoint, we can say that Roger was not the beginning, but rather a link in a long chain of dreamers, a chain that perhaps began with his father and will end with Luffy, who now carries that hat, the will, and the destiny. If we go back to the Wano flashback and observe the moment Roger met Rayleigh for the first time, we see a young man passionate about adventure, with a sparkle of challenge and ambition in his eyes. Most importantly, he was wearing the very same straw hat we know today with Luffy, indicating that he had it from his early youth, long before he became the Pirate King and before he embarked on his true journey across the seas. This detail may seem simple, but it is pivotal in confirming that the hat was not just a prize or a relic from his voyages, but an ancient legacy that passed to him at a young age. In the same way, it was passed to Luffy when Shanks gave it to him, driven by a deep belief that this child would be the continuation of Roger himself. Here, the most logical hypothesis emerges. The hat was not in the hands of some random person or a passing great pirate who met young Roger, admired him, and then gifted him the hat. This is because Oda, in his narrative style, does not tend to repeat the same pattern with every major character. Instead, he always incorporates subtle differences that create distinction between the heroes' paths. If Shanks inherited the straw hat from his captain, who became his ultimate role model, and chose to pass it on to Luffy because he saw that burning spirit in him, then Roger most likely received it from his father, not as a keepsake, but as a symbol of a continuing will rooted in the family. His father was perhaps a great pirate in his time, who also sought to uncover the world's secrets. He may have come close to understanding the truth of Joy Boy, but failed to reach Raftel for some reason, thus passing on his dream to his son, much like a baton being handed in a race of willpower. It's possible that Roger's father, whom we know nothing about so far, will appear later when Oda finally decides to reveal Roger's full past. It might then turn out that he was one of the few who carried the burden of the Void Century, and perhaps he knew of the government's schemes to erase the truth. So, he decided to make his son the spark of change. From here, the fundamental difference between Roger and Luffy becomes clear. Luffy met an external person who placed him on his path, whereas Roger grew up in a household that had, from ancient times, sown the seeds of rebellion against injustice and the pursuit of freedom. Perhaps, through his father's conversations, he first heard the name of Joy Boy and learned that will does not die. It is passed on, just like the straw hat, from hand to hand, from generation to generation, until the one with the strength, freedom, and faith comes to fulfill the old promise. What strongly supports the idea that Roger's father, not someone else, gave him the straw hat, is the profound conversation between Roger and Whitebeard after his return from Raftel, when he decided to reveal to him the truth he discovered about the Void Century and the One Piece treasure. The beginning of that conversation was surprising and deliberate on Roger's part, when he told Whitebeard that his real name was not Gol D Roger as the world government promoted, but Gol D Roger. This confirms that the D in his name was not a mere coincidence or a passing title, but a sacred family legacy that the government intentionally sought to erase because it pointed to an ancient lineage linked to an era they did not want to resurrect. The question that arises here is, how did Roger know this truth? How did he realize that the government had falsified his original name and concealed a small letter that carried within it great revolutionary meanings? It is impossible that he discovered this by mere chance, or through some stranger or other pirate who took him in, as this information can only be acquired from the roots, from the family, and specifically from his father who raised him. This brings us back again to the hypothesis that Roger's father was not just a passing figure in his life, but a present, guiding, and believing force in the legacy of the D. Perhaps he was one of the few who understood the significance of this letter in the eyes of the world government and kept its secret hidden, waiting for the one who truly deserved to carry it. Roger's father did not merely teach him the meaning of his name, but perhaps he instilled in him the passion to understand his history and seek out the hidden truth, just as Dragon did when he insisted that Luffy bear the D name, even though he didn't raise him himself. The difference is that Dragon did this out of defiance and struggle against the government, while Roger's father likely did so out of a deep belief that his son would one day become the leader who would reveal the truth. Then we return to the straw hat that was on Roger's head since his youth. This hat would not have been given to him by a stranger without him knowing who he truly was. If we assumed he grew up among pirates, away from his father, it would have been highly unlikely that he knew his true origins or the meaning of the letter in his name, and he would not have known that he belonged to the D lineage at all. Therefore, the logical and only conclusion is that the person who gave him the hat is the same person who told him the truth about his heritage, instilled in him the spirit of rebellion against injustice, and nurtured the big dream within him, his father. This hat was not merely a symbol, but a covenant between two generations, between a father and his son, that it would remain on the head of the one who carries the will of Joy Boy until the old promise is fulfilled. The promise of freedom, the promise of liberation, the promise to reveal the truth that the world government has tried to bury for 800 years.